in heaven, it's good to be here this morning. It's good to have worship time, and we're thankful that you've made this available for us. You've built it into the week's schedule, and we certainly need it and appreciate it. We're glad that we can freely worship this morning, open your word, and learn from it, be encouraged from experiences of individuals and groups that can inspire us to share you more. We're asking your blessing on these services this morning to keep us in tune to thoughts of the Holy Spirit, to give us ideas, to inspire us of what needs to be changed in our lives and our character to be ready for heaven. Motivate us to be willing to speak up for you to those around us. We pray that you will help Jeannie to feel better today and be able to enjoy her Sabbath. Others who are not here, bless their Sabbath worship wherever they might be. And Lord, we know you're coming soon, and we indeed want to be ready to see you, and pray that we will not be distracted by the enticements of the world and recognize that heaven has so much more to offer that we don't want to miss out on, especially just being with you and growing our relationship to know you and Jesus more. We pray in your name. Amen. Right, we're going to sing our opening song, number 367. 367 is Rescue the Perishing. And you can stand if you like. You may be seated. Some excellent themes in those lyrics for what you'll be hearing this morning. Every year, several pastors come together to go salmon fishing somewhere. It doesn't say where. One pastor didn't bring his polarized glasses. He noticed that his buddies could see the fish in the river and cast their fly presentations before them. While they caught one fish after another, he caught nothing. Then his friend realized what was happening. He said, "Come over here next to me." His friend passed an extra pair of glasses to him and pointed to the river. "Can you see now?" The pastor replied, "Now I can see. There are salmon everywhere." One moment, the pastor could not see the fish. However, as soon as he put on the right glasses, his worldview changed. In the time of Israel, Moses sent spies to go into the promised land to see the potential. 10 spies saw the obstacles that faced them. "We came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land." From Numbers 13, which we'll be looking at a little bit later this morning. 10 men saw danger and defeat. However, 2 of the spies could see the promise. Which glasses are you wearing when you are out and about and interacting with people or trying to solve problems? And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and possess it." When we see the promise of the second coming of Christ, we can understand why giving is important. We will see how God can use our gifts to help others see the promise before them. We have a world to enlighten about the second coming. People are distracted. So this morning, the loose offering, not marked for anything else, will go for the world budget. And if you've given online already, that's okay too. Will a deacon come forward? Father, we recognize there is a world to tell about your soon coming, and we're thankful that these funds can go around the world and help with that outreach. We pray your blessing on it, and thankful that there are people willing to share and give back to you what is yours anyway. In your name we pray. Amen. Today is a bit of a theme in our worship time together of outreach. And for this morning, our church time, we're going to hear an outreach from the International, from Holly and Marcus, who apparently went to Belize. Been looking forward to hearing more of the stories. We knew that Holly was on this trip at the end of the school year. And so we'll get to hear more about it today and all the rest of you. So I'll turn the time over to them and let them tell us their experience. Glad they can be here. So thank you ahead of time.
Welcome, everybody. So my name is Marcus. I've met some of you guys, but not all of you. So I'd like to introduce myself. My sister and we're here to visit the Woodruffs. We come from the Eugene area, so a little ways south of here. And Holly and I would like to share with you guys a mission trip report from our trip to Belize. We went there probably about a month ago, right? somewhere around there. And we had a lot of cool experiences, and so we wanted to share those things with you guys today. And at the end of our presentation, we will open up the floor if you guys have questions, and we can answer them and, have a bit of discussion. So to start out, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Belize, what we were working with, and where Belize is, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't know where it is, where it was before we went on the trip, so I had to do a bit of research myself. Approximately 62.9% of the Belizean people speak English. So that was a big blessing for when we went. It made our life a lot easier because I don't speak Spanish, even though I have a Hispanic last name, which is kind of embarrassing. But, we made do. And the rest of the population mostly speaks Spanish. Most of the older folks in the community didn't speak English. They only spoke Spanish, and this is because they just recently started teaching English in the school. So most of the young kids spoke English and Spanish, which was great. And we'll tell you more about that later because Holly and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of kids. And also a statistic from 2010 showed that 74.3% of the population is part of some Christian denomination, but out of that, only 5.5% are Seventh-day Adventist. Out of that 5.5%, not everybody, goes to church and does that. Part of it is just kind of having a name recognition of saying I'm with a church, and, kind of almost a good luck kind of situation. So now I'm going to pass the time over to Holly, and she's going to talk about how the mission trip even happened.
So most of you might have, I don't know if my mom was sharing this during prayer requests while I was still away and we were trying to figure it all out, but because of, COVID stuff, this mission trip was not the easiest for our professor, Mr. Peacock. He planned it, and he's planned pretty much all the mission trips, like dozens of them, and he starts in, maybe December or January, and it's all good. Last year they didn't have one because it was, impossible. This year he really wanted to, and Weimar's like, yes, plan the trip, because it actually is a class credit, which is nice. And some majors it's required, so he's like, I need to plan it. But he couldn't plan it. They didn't tell him he could plan it until March something, maybe halfway through March. So it was 2 months until we would have needed to leave. And he's not used to doing it in that short of a time. So, but then for some reason, our administration was told him to plan the trip, but then they're like, oh, but you can't leave the country. You shouldn't leave the country. And we're like, okay. We just decided he kept checking out options. I don't know how many hours he spent, but we were going to go to Puerto Rico. That didn't work out. We tried a whole bunch of other, even states in, different states in the U.S., because sometimes they need help, but either they didn't want us to come because they thought our group was too big or whatever for COVID. So it was looking pretty hopeless. We had meetings every week to try to hear any updates. He's like, I don't have anything, guys. I don't know where we're going. And we're like, we just have a few weeks left. And so then administration's like, it's not really the time to go. And then Mr. Peacock's like, well, you asked me to plan it, and then God's opening, if he opens the door, we need to go. So he's like, I'm going to keep trying. And then we connected with some a ministry in Belize. It's called MOVE, and it's not an acronym, it's just called MOVE, because what they like to do is they train people for maybe 3 or 4 months, just a short time, but it's really intensive training in Belize, but then they just send you and you need to go move and start doing your own thing. And they really wanted us to come help them do some meetings in a town 15 minutes away from them. They're kind of out in the country. And some other surrounding villages needed some help with different health expos, and you'll hear about that. So they wanted us to come, and we're like, wait, here's an open door. This country is not, the COVID wasn't really an issue there. And so Mr. Peacock's like, we have to go. So he went to administration, and they're like, they couldn't really say no because they saw that God opened the door for us, and they're like, okay. But now guess what? We only have like 3 or 4 weeks to plan the whole thing. So he's like, I am never planning a mission trip in this short of time again. He was exhausted because we were all in finals week too. But eventually, God worked it out. Wait, how do you scroll into? Because there's more. So this mission trip was a miracle. Yes.
Before you change the slide,
Uh-huh.
tell us where that is.
Okay, this is actually on the Move campus when we got there. So the green roof is just kind of the kitchen's in there. We would eat in there, have worship, get all of our supplies. Like, it was just like our common building. And we did use that bus a lot too. Or the van. Yeah. Okay. I think I finished that slide.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know where Belize is, like I used to be, Belize is right kind of at the bottom of the Yucatan Peninsula. It's almost Mexico. Looks kind of like Mexico, but just a tiny little country that's squished in right in there. And so in terms of flying distance, it was probably 6 to 7 hours of flying time to get there. And I'll zoom in a bit. On the very right side, you can see it's labeled halfway. It says Belize. We flew into Belize City over on the coast. You can see it about halfway up. And the labeled section titled Orange Walk, where the pin is, that's approximately where we were staying. It's the Orange Walk district. That's where we're staying at that Move campus. And we will go into what we did later on, but just for future reference, the other pin up there is where we did construction. So I'll just throw that out there. And also, I just wanted to say that there is a large percentage that is Christian in Belize, but there is still a lot of idol worship and stuff that happens there. And so there is a work to be done. And so now Holly and I are going to show you some of the photos, and we're going to share some cool experiences that we had on our journey to Central America.
Okay, so the day after Weimar graduation, on our group of 15, it was like 11 students, a couple of our Weimar staff, and then a couple people who worked for Build and Restore Ministries, which we'll talk about later. And so there's 15 of us, and we left to the airport early in the morning. We flew from Sacramento to Belize City with a stop. We stopped in Houston, but we stopped there longer than we planned because there was a bunch of thunderstorms in Houston right then, so we couldn't take off for Belize City for like 6 hours, I think. Yeah. So we had some fun standing in the airport, I guess, but it was good. The thing is, God has good timing, and it's okay if your connection's delayed, right? Because you're already, you didn't miss your connection, so it wasn't that bad. We just got in really late. And so we got in at midnight instead of 4 p.m. And we got to Move, and we were tired, so we went to bed. And that's kind of one of the rooms. They have a really nice campus, and we all just kind of shared a room with someone. There was 3 different houses, a couple for the guys and 1 house for the girls. And our house had 3 rooms, which could hold 2 or 3 people each. And each one had our own bathroom and shower, so it was pretty nice. And we had fans, which was really nice. If they didn't have fans, I don't think we would have survived because we're spoiled like that. But it was pretty humid. It actually wasn't too hot. It was just really humid. So it was nice to stay there, and it was super pretty. There was a lot of nice flowers and stuff that was just on campus. A lot of nice fruit, those are papayas. They had mango trees, but it wasn't really season. What else? What other fruit? They have a lot of
Watermelon. A lot of good watermelon, good pineapple.
Oh yeah, the pineapples are totally different from here. It's really good. And was the white fruit soursop?
Yeah, soursop.
That it was super juicy. It will go up to here when you're eating it. But it was super good. So we really enjoyed those things, and you'll probably hear more of the food later. And one day, we did get to do some fun things, too. Like, we stopped by the ocean. This is actually, I guess it's not technically like an ocean, but, you know. Yeah. It was nice, though, because it was kind of salty water, and we all had, like, a ton of bug bites on our legs. So just to sit there for a little bit with our legs in it was super nice, because it was miserable most of the time without it. But it actually helped a lot. I didn't even remember I had bug bites, but it was really pretty. And we got to stop there for a few minutes after one of our health expos. That's another picture. And then I think Marcus is going to talk about the construction now.
Right, and Holly mentioned that it wasn't too hot there. I beg to slightly differ. It was humid. It was very humid, and I was looking at the weather forecast while we were still at Weimar, like a week before we left for the trip, and high humidity and low to mid, usually 90s. So once we stepped off the plane out into the outdoors, that was bad. So after a couple of days, we got used to it, and but the first couple of days, I will say, they were very toasty.
We're used to the fact that your clothes don't like move against your skin; they just stay in one spot on your skin.
Right. So every other day on the trip, we got to do construction. So we drove about, it's probably about an hour from where we stayed. And on the map slide, I showed you where that was, Corozal. And so we drove there, and when we got to the church, it was just foundation, and then, and roof, and then the kind of metal framing that's around it. This is when we were about halfway done. So what our job was...
The church is next to it.
Right. The building you see in the back is the actual church. This was kind of a, I think a Sabbath school-ish kind of room. So our job was to be bricklayers, so to speak. And so we drove about a minute down the road, and they were hand making these bricks. And so we got a trailer, loaded them up, and brought them over. We got a cement mixer. That was a blessing to have a cement mixer. You didn't have to do it by hand. And we had sand and gravel, and we mixed it all together. And we had our concrete mix, and we spent probably 3 to 4 hours a day, every other day, working on that church in the heat. So it was hard.
But they made us good lunch.
But they gave us good lunch. So yeah, this is about when we were halfway done. This is Holly and I working on putting up one of the walls. That's a window, spot where a window would go right there.
That was sketchy. One, like the people working on a different window, you see like over top, there's like a board on the top layer because it's over standing on nothing. And then someone did it wrong and they like fell down. So thankfully, God protected us from getting head injuries and stuff.
Yeah, you had to be careful, but it was fun. And this is, I believe, the last day of our construction of the roughly 2 weeks that we were in Belize. Yeah, there was still a lot more work to be done, but this is what we were able to accomplish. We got all the 4 walls up, so that was good. This is the group of us that was working on the project. And there were a couple people from the MOVE campus that came and helped us as well.
Yes, that's our professor in the middle.
And also, something that was really neat and was really a blessing is, we were all out there working on stuff, and Mr. Peacock, he was thinking to himself, and he said, why don't we come and bring glasses the next day we do construction. We were right next to the road, and set up a little table, and people will come and stop by, and we can fit them with glasses. And so while some of us were doing construction, there were 1 or 2 people giving out glasses, and people were really happy. Some people were overjoyed. They were finally actually able to read their Bibles. They could see where they were walking, so it was a blessing to be able to do that. And also in this picture, the back building there, needed to get repainted inside very badly. And so our group leader, his name was Ostop. He's from a ministry called Build and Restore International. And what he does is he goes around and sets up missionary teams to go to different places in the world where people need construction needs or repairs, kind of like this. And so that's how we got hooked up with him. And so he went to go out to town to see if he could find paint to repaint this building. Obviously, we had limited funds. He tried to find the cheapest that he could. And the cheapest, the best place he could find it was a 5-gallon for how much?
140.
140 US.
The other ones were like 200 something, 10.
Right. So it was really a blessing that we were able to find that amount of paint for that cheap compared to what it normally would have been. And we weren't sure if we were going to be able to have enough paint to paint the whole building. And so we started painting, and we knew it wasn't going to be enough to get the whole inside. And we finished the whole inside with, we had leftovers from one 5-gallon bucket. So that was really amazing. And also, every other day. We did $2 right. Every other day, we did a health expo from probably, 3 to 4 hours averaging. So what we did was we went into a building or a church who opened up their doors to us, and we did the Weimar New Start principles, which is nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. And so you can see the posters up there, and so we had a booth for each one. I was involved with the exercise booth, and Holly, what booth were you in?
So I was doing the nutrition booth. So a lot of the people, they don't eat no, they don't eat healthily at all. So it was fun to teach them. Sometimes you had to have a translator because there was a lot of older people that came through. When we did the Kids Health Expo, it was pretty fun. They all know English, so it was okay. But I know a lot of people would just say thank you so much just for simple nutrition information, like where to find protein besides from animals, or just little simple things like that. They really appreciated it. And we were able to do a lot of consultations at the end of our, they would go through all the 8 stations, and then we'd have consultations, and we'd have the glasses again. And the kids had a different thing. They do a game or activity at each station, so theirs was totally different. But it was pretty cool.
Right, and I was involved, like I said, the exercise. So what me and my partner did is we did blood pressure. So we took people's blood pressure, gave them handouts, and if their blood pressure was good, great. If it wasn't so good, we gave them tips and pointers on how to bring it down to a healthy level. Something interesting that I found that I was able to share with some of the people who didn't have good blood pressures. When people were coming through, I noticed that most all of the people who had good blood pressures were guys who worked out in the field every day for hours on end. They were exercising, and they had a really healthy blood pressure. And so I was able to share that with some of the people who didn't work out in the fields and had a higher blood pressure. I said, this is a witness to what exercise can do to you. And so that was a really good experience, being able to share that with people in a way that both me and they could understand.
In the Kids Health Expo.
In the Kids Health Expo, I made kids exercise and taught them how to take their pulse. So that was pretty fun, and how to exercise their heart.
Okay, so something that we did. So we did construction and health expos, we would alternate days pretty much. And then in the town that's like near Move, kind of like what they were in charge of, so separate from our whole construction and stuff. It was a village, I guess, called Tower Hill. I don't know, we didn't put it on the map, but it's basically next to Move, about 15 minutes away drive. And we held a meeting every single night, except for the one day where we were doing, you'll hear about later, tourist stuff. So we had it every night, so it was probably like 13 meetings, maybe. And except on Sabbath, we had it in the morning and the evening. So these were just meetings. They were kind of like, they were spiritual, but we didn't want people to be turned away by that. And so I know, like by the Council of Ellen White, if you teach people, if you help them with their health, it's a way that they will be more willing to listen to spiritual things instead of just starting with that. So I know we were with the kids, which we'll hear about, but I know for the adults, they had a really good program. I didn't really get to hear much of it because I was busy, but they would start out with, I'm not sure the exact order, but they had a small health talk each night. Different people would rotate. They'd have a small talk on like mental health as well, maybe like depression recovery or stuff like that. Then they would have like one special music, and they'd have a natural remedy demonstration, because there's a whole bunch. And then they kind of adapted it to the local stuff they had there. So it'd show them like a different natural remedy each night. So it was a lot of health stuff too. And then they would have like a short sermon, like, and it would be like a very relevant sermon to them. So I'm sure there was many testimonies from the adults. I think I'll share a little bit later about some of the family that was there. And for the kids, we were right outside. So on this picture, on the left side, well, the thing in the corner is the bathroom, but like on this left side, there's the main church where the adults were. So we were right next to them. We just had this little shelter here. This one was in the daylight because it was Saturday morning, but the rest of them we did after dark because it was in the evening. And so there was a couple light bulbs under there, I think. So that worked out most of the time. And we had a couple benches, and the kids, maybe the first night, maybe like 10 kids came that lived right around the church area in the village. And then I think the next night it was 20 kids for a while after that. And then it was probably 30 after a week or so. And we mostly had 30 for the last week. Maybe on the last couple days there was like 40. And then that was like all the kids in the village. So, and then we even got to the point where there was like a ranch, little farm area about a 5-minute drive from there. But it was kind of too far for the parents to just send the kids to walk. So we would go, as soon as we got to the church, they'd drop all of us off and then go take our van or bus and go pick up a few other kids from another area. So that was pretty fun. So pretty much what we did, Marcus and I and Alexis, who is another education major with me at Weimar. So the three of us, apparently we were chosen to do the kids' meetings. And our format was pretty much, here's just some pictures of them. Our format was basically, we had a long song service because the kids loved that. Marcus was playing guitar, and then we had songs that they taught us some songs. We had no idea what they were, but thankfully Alexis knew Spanish pretty good, or we might have been in trouble. But we taught them some songs, and then of course there were songs that both of us already knew. So we had many songs, and I don't know if you guys know the song "We Are Soldiers," where they kind of like yell out one of their friends' names, like this person was a soldier, and then they have to like, at the end of the chorus, they have to say, like, stand up and fight anyhow. And they were quite enthusiastic about that. I think we sang it every single night. Yeah. And it would take about, like, 10 minutes because they had to go through everybody. Yeah, so that was fun. They loved singing. And then we would have, what was next? Like oh, yeah. Oh, wow, I'm forgetting. Okay. The next thing was the story. So we'd choose, our theme was, like, children in the Bible, so choose a story of any like good story in the Bible that had a small child or like a teenager in it. And we would take turns telling the stories, and we would give them like a mystery bag with a object related to the story in it. They could only put their hand in it, they couldn't like look at it, and they would try to figure out the item. So then they were like more engaged in the story and everything, and they loved that. And then we had memory verse to go with it. So I usually taught them the memory verse, which is pretty uneventful, except for when a gecko fell on me during it from the rafter. But it was okay. They're like this big. But yeah, we would have the memory verse, and they would have to remember the memory verse till the end of the meeting, and then they can get like a small prize, because we brought a lot of prizes. We had a whole suitcase full of prizes and craft stuff. So they could get a prize if they, so they would be doing their craft and like helping each other learn the memory verse, like, you know, correcting each other quite harshly. You missed a word, and they'd be like helping each other. So that was pretty fun to watch. They're extremely enthusiastic. And then we had a craft to go with the story as well. So we thankfully had most of them were planned before the trip, so we had templates and stuff. And then we would have time on campus on move for like an hour or two. We'd usually have to prepare for the meeting. So while our other friends would be practicing their sermon for the adults, we'd be like cutting out mangers and whatever. So that was pretty fun. And that was kind of our program format. And if we had time at the end, if the adults went over time, we'd like play games outside. We had to be kind of quiet because their doors were open and the adults would hear us quite easily. And I'll share some kind of testimonies from the kids probably in a little bit. There's some more pictures. I think it got cut off a little. It's okay. There's the famous suitcase with all this stuff. And on Sabbath morning, we had a bunch of leftover supplies and prizes, so we kind of just, it was kind of like Christmas for a little bit, and we gave all of them out, and a lot of them were looking forward to that like the entire 2 weeks, because we told them we would give out the leftovers, except for certain things we had to take back that wasn't really ours to give away. And I'll also share more testimonies on that part later. So, and if you had anything to say about the kids.
Right, and a lot of these kids, these are from a lot of poor families. The clothes that they're wearing is the best they have, and they would come to almost every meeting wearing the exact same, their best clothes. So they didn't have a lot of opportunity to have a toy to play with. We introduced to them like glow sticks, bouncy balls, and other stuff to us that's just cars. That's, you know, what's so special about that? But to these guys, they had never seen that before, and that was really special to them to be able to, you know, actually have something like that for the first time. And we just take that for granted. So that was really really special. So I want to show you a little bit about the food that we had. I was quite pleased with it. It was normally a base of rice and beans, and we had, let's see, those are tamales, and sometimes we had soup. We had a lot of vegetables, and a lot of good fruit at probably almost every meal, and also a lot of corn product, and a lot of good hot sauce. So it was good.
Okay, so like I said before, for one day we didn't have any meetings or anything, and we got up early to have like a tourist day. So somebody from Move, one of the workers there, he kind of was our guide, I guess, or at least he drove us around. And we drove like 3 hours or something. So Belize is pretty small. We went like way north, right? Yeah, we almost went to the top probably. And we got first we went to Zipline, and there was like 6 zip lines. This was the last one where you just went around a corner, then you saw like really pretty water. And if you saw it from the opposite perspective of someone out on the line, it looked way better actually. But it was really, really pretty. And it was a little bit scary, but it was okay because it wasn't super high. It wasn't as high as I thought it was going to be, so it was okay. Did you have anything?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was kind of amusing once you got to the end and you got to watch people coming in. For some reason or other, where you start, they will tell you if you need to use your handbrake or not to slow down when you get to the end. And one of our, it's actually a nursing instructor, she came with us, and for some reason they didn't tell her to use her handbrake at the end, and so she came in hot and she was flying in, and so we're all standing there watching her come in like, oh no, and we just see the whoosh, and looked like she nearly took out some of the guys that were with us. But
the guides will like catch you. They're not gonna let you like hit anything. So,
Right.
But still, it's pretty funny. Or like the tree that you come up to, they have a giant cushion on it. So it's not like the end of the world, but it's funny. So, or the thing is, sometimes they would only. I noticed they would, like, certain ones, they'd be like, oh, don't use your brake on this one because you'll, like, get stuck in the middle because it's too slow. But sometimes they would only tell the girls to use our brake, and then they told the guys, they didn't tell the guys to do it. And it was, like, so boring because I was like, I shouldn't have used my brake on that one. So I don't know why they did that. But anyways, after that, we got to sing. We learned a couple a cappella pieces just with our group. So if we wanted to say thank you to somebody or sing, we had a song ready. So the guys that helped us with the zip lining, we got back to the place, and then we sang it for them, and it's called the Irish Blessing. It was just a really pretty song, kind of like a goodbye, kind of like prayer blessing song, but it's encouraging too. So some of the guys were crying and stuff, and it's like you might not ever know what's happening in their life, but you can, they enjoyed how our group was behaving and stuff on that excursion because they're used to just having other random tourist groups that aren't necessarily behaving like we were. So, yeah. And the next thing we did, let's see. Was that the next thing? Yeah, that was the next thing. That was the best part, in my opinion. You want me to tell about it?
Yeah, sure. So we drove for maybe another, 20 minutes, half an hour or so from the zipline place. There is a national park, or Belize's equivalent to a national park here, down there. And all we were told is we were going to go through caves on inner tubes. And we weren't quite sure how that was going to happen. So we were just told to bring our swimming suits and get ready to go. So we got to the place, and they had stacks of tubes, and we walked with our inner tubes through the jungle for quite some distance. Yeah, it was half an hour to 45 minutes of a walk with inner tube. So.
But we saw like a bunch of stuff, like those the ants that carry leaves, like in big trails. Butter ants. Yeah, those, and we saw like, I guess moths or butterflies. They're like
Right.
huge. They were just gray, but they were really cool. And
It was a great walk, don't get me wrong, but it was long with an inner tube. And let's see. Sorry, wrong button. We started going through the cave on our inner tubes. They hooked us all together with a rope, and we started going in, and it got dark rather quickly. It was really pretty, though. We had headlamps on, and you could go around and see all the neat stuff inside the cave, and about halfway through it opened up to this big basin kind of thing where the river was flowing underground, and a big open area, and right at the top there was a hole and light was shining through, and it was super pretty going through and being able to see that, and it was shining on the water, and it was a really neat thing.
And we got to sing. If you sing in there, the acoustics are extremely cool. So there's probably some videos that a couple people brought their phones and like waterproof things, and that was like probably the best part because we got to sing about. We were like singing different songs about like that mentioned God being our shelter, our fortress. Because it's like we were on top of a river, but we were like underground. So it was extremely cool, and at some points, you can't really see any. You couldn't see any light from anywhere.
No.
So we like all turned off of our headlamps, and it was really dark. But it's just so cool to see that God's presence is everywhere, and you can feel it everywhere. But it feels different in that place versus another place. But He's still everywhere. But it's just you have a different experience. You'd have to be there to realize what I'm saying. But
And there were big spiders too.
oh yeah, in the cave there's a spider like this. But the body is only like this, okay? It just has long legs, but,
I was thankful not to view it. And we also got to go visit some of the Mayan ruins. So these pictures are from there. This is kind of like a temple that they had, a couple temples, and over off to one side there was old, with like a dilapidated rocks where they would, you could tell it used to be a home kind of thing. So that was really neat. And we had a really good time on that touristy-ish day adventure.
I forgot something. When we were in the cave, the guides were telling us about, because there's like stalactites and all that, like you'd see in a cave without water too. And they were telling us all about it, and they're like, then they told us like the whole perspective that it would take like millions of years to get it away. They told us that whole side, and they're like, yeah, but we don't actually believe that. And then they were telling us, and we're like, yeah, that's true. We agree with you. So it was cool. Excuse me. It was cool because they were also giving God credit for it, which I've never heard that before. If you go somewhere in the U.S. with a tour guide or most anywhere, I feel like they don't say that. So I thought that was cool. So they liked hearing us singing too. Yeah.
So that kind of sums up the activities and how our daily schedule went on our trip. We'll show you some more pictures after of just other things. But we want to share some of the personal blessings that we received on that trip, things that we learned, things that helped us grow spiritually. So I am going to tell you a couple of the things I learned and got blessing from the trip.
Yeah.
Right, so the first thing, you can see the guy in the red shirt on the very right, kind of down below him, there's a little boy in a black shirt. He and his brother live in the next village over and don't come from a very good family life and don't have much. And so this was our first morning we were there, and our leader let us out in a game. And what? Yeah, the move director.
The lady with the flowered pants. Her name is Kayla.
And so what we did is we went back to our rooms and found something that either that we didn't need or that we were willing to give to stuff we didn't need, and just put it in a little baggie and gave it to these boys. And so I gave them a pair of socks. What did you give them?
My watch.
She gave them her watch.
But I didn't really need it because I have a phone, so.
So that was really a blessing to be able to share those with those boys and see their faces just light up with joy at the things that pair of socks, like it's kind of cringy, but they're, this is something special to them.
And they'd never gotten like a bunch of presents for themselves. Like if, their parents would give them some food, but like they never had like their own special things. Like I think some of us they would get like stuffed animals. We gave them some personal just supplies of stuff,
water
or like
bottles.
A nice water bottle, stuff like that is what we gave them. It's just like basic things for us, right? But it was so cool because they're like, they don't even used to having that on like their birthday or Christmas even because they're poor. Even the people that move don't have a ton of resources being that far out. So even we just, that's another thing we did. We donated a lot of clothes just to move before we left. Because the people that work there, the other avenues that work at Move, they need stuff that they can't usually get. So it was a blessing for sure.
Yeah, it definitely was. And one other big blessing that I had, before this trip, I really had not had much experience with kids. I really wasn't comfortable around them. It really wasn't interesting to me. One evening, we were in a mission trip meeting, still at Weimar, figuring out stuff to do. And Mr. Peacock, he put on the board all the activities we'd be doing, and we could write our name by the thing we wanted to be involved with, and if that was first priority, we would underline it. And so I think I put something health-related, construction, the things I'm interested in, or music. And Holly comes up to me and she's, why didn't you put your name by the kids? And I don't know, I'm not very good with kids. And so she went and wrote my name up under the kids section. I didn't like it at the time, but I was really thankful that she did that because I think that's what helped me to grow the most on this mission trip was working with the kids. Probably the third or fourth night in, it was right after telling a story, and we were going to hand out the crafts, and we were helping kids and kind of spreading out. And I was going around making sure everybody was doing great, and came across this little girl, found out her name was Nalini. Couldn't remember her name for the next couple days, but I finally got it down. And she was looking a little bit down, and so I went and talked to her, and I think there's a picture of her somewhere here.
Yeah.
She's one of those kids way up there. And you can choose which one you want it to be. And so I went up to her and I said, my name is Marcus. How's your day going? And she said it was going good. And she was a little bit shy, didn't know what was happening. It was her first night there. She was 10 years old. You can imagine it'd be a little scary, a little intimidating. All the other kids know what's going on. They know what to do, but you don't. And so I kind of picked up on that, and so I went and sat next to her and started helping her with her craft. And it helped me realize something. Kids aren't as annoying as I thought. And so I actually had a really good time spending time with her, just one-on-one, helping her with her craft, helping her get kind of comfortable with the environment, with all the other kids. She had friends there, but they were off doing their own thing. So it was really special to me to be able to be directly involved like that with somebody. And let's see. That's your stuff. Okay, this is my stuff. Another thing that was really neat that I hadn't realized before. So every evening, like Holly mentioned, we had memory verse time. And where we were, most of us didn't have cell phone service. We didn't have internet. We just had our Bibles or our Bibles on our phones. And so we were trying to think of Bible verses in relation to the stories that we would be telling. And, Bible verses that were encouraging. And it really hit me because we were thinking of a Bible story. I don't remember what story it was, and we were trying to find a Bible verse for it. And number one, we had trouble thinking of one. Number two, when we found it, we couldn't remember where it was so we could get it word for word. And that's something that really hit me because there is going to be a time when we won't be able to have our Bibles or access them. And this kind of gave me a taste for how that's going to be. And I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know a lot of these Bible verses or where they could be found and how important those are. And only then, when I went into this certain situation, it helped me realize how comforting and special those Bible verses are. So it taught me that I really want to learn those Bible verses and take it to heart and not just cover over it, because there is a time when we're not going to be able to do that. One last testimony from me that was really neat. I don't remember who it was. I don't know if you were going to share this. I just thought of it a little bit ago. I don't want to steal your thunder. One of our group members, before we left on the trip, we were having prayer time, and we prayed that all the kids from the village where we would be working would come to the meetings. And what was so neat is after 5 or 6 days, we all asked the kids, but I went and was talking to one of them, and I said, "Are there more kids around here in the village?" And he said, "No, this is all the kids." And we even had to go out, like Holly said, to the ranch and get more kids. So that was really an answer to prayer that we were able to have all those kids from the village. And I think God really wanted those meetings to happen, and it was a direct answer to prayer. So that was really special and really touching to me. And those are the really special things that I learned from this trip.
So I already talked about a couple of things, but one day, okay, so one day after, I think, a health expo, probably, we needed lunch, but we were really far away from our campus. So we went to somebody's house. Her name is Maricela, I think. And I don't have a picture of her because I didn't wasn't really appropriate to take pictures in her house. But they were very poor, okay? They live in kind of just a really dirty place, and it's not like they're trying to be dirty. They just don't really have any way to keep out stuff from the outside coming in and all of that because they're just poor. They have animals and stuff too. But she made us a super good food. I mean, anything is good when you're that hungry, but it was actually really good. And I was just like, she was so happy to make all of us food. It was a lot of food, obviously. She was happy to give up a lot of food to us. And she's like, we had to translate for her. She had, I think, maybe a couple of her daughters, at least one of them, and I think grandchild, right? I don't know. Anyway, she had several family members in the house too, all living together. And she's like, hey, can I give some advice to you guys? And so she told like the translator, and they're like, she was like, you guys need to remember, if you do anything in your life, you have to keep going because God will, like, no matter what, because God is always going to get you through stuff. And I'm like, it's super humbling when people like that give you that advice. I was like, wow. Like, I don't know why we complain about stuff. Her husband had died many, many years ago from something really sad. I forgot the cause. She survived a deadly cancer. She said it should have died 17 years ago. And one of her daughters had almost died from a blood condition. And she's like, yeah, just keep going. Just keep trusting God. And we're like, yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't. Like, it's just, yeah, with the privilege that we have, it feels extremely stupid to realize those times when you haven't trusted God for really simple things. So that was definitely, those lessons are emphasized when you go to a place like that. And actually, I think but the thing is, you have to realize also, another lesson I learned from hearing about their family is the great controversy happens everywhere, all the time. We cannot see it with our physical eyes, but it's always happening. I think one of her daughters was the one where someone in our group was talking to her, and someone in our group who liked to ask about all the different plants and figure out what they are and stuff and learn the new things in the country. And he's like, hey, what's this kind of tree? Like by the end of their driveway when they were walking us back to our bus. And they're like, I don't know, we don't really know the name for this little tree or this plant, but we call it like the weeping woman tree. And we're like, oh, okay, why do you guys call it that? They're like, every night when we come home, or every time we come up the driveway, we see a weeping woman there. And we're like, oh, wow, because it's obviously not someone that just, like, hangs out there all the time. So there's a lot of spiritualism there, and comes in different forms than it might in the U.S., maybe, just because they don't have access to other things like technology or whatever. Well, they have a lot of phones and stuff, but they don't have necessarily the same exposure to different media and just things we have in this culture, but things like that still happen. So like the great controversy is everywhere, it just might be in different forms. So we're able to pray with them about that, and hopefully still praying about that for them. And I learned a ton of lessons from the kids. That was the main thing for me. And these kids, like we were saying, they're so grateful for everything. They would see that we would have glue sticks for a certain craft, and they're like, when your guys' meeting's over, can I have one of them for my school? Because my mom won't buy it for me for school, or they're too poor or whatever. So they're like, when we did the first craft, I know several kids came up to me the first night after they made just a simple craft. They were nothing expensive, really, for us. And they're like, wait, we made the craft. Wait, we get to keep these crafts too? I'm like, yes, for us that's like normal, but they're not used to just getting things like that. They have very simple lives, which I think in some ways is a good thing, but also there's things that they don't have that we're totally used to. So they were so enthusiastic, like I said, when they were singing. They just sing each song each night because they want to make sure we sing the song as often as we can. And it was just a contrast because I've helped with different kids programs in the U.S. or whatever, and those are mostly kids that have always been in church, like a VBS or whatever. And those are like Adventist kids that have always been in church, and they're used to all the songs. They just kind of run around and, But kids the same age, even 3-4-year-olds in Belize, they're always trying to find their best clothes. Some of the girls are like, I don't have any more nice dresses. I can't come tomorrow night. I'm like, please come. Like, just wear what you want to. And they're so respectful to God. Something that really, really touched me that I forgot to mention, in our program, we had prayer time. And the prayer time was, like, I think right before the story. Like, our last song in the song service, we'd always sing Into My Heart. And then we would have prayer time, and we'd say, the first few nights, they didn't want to pray at all. So we just did it. It was okay. And then eventually they started giving us prayer requests. We're like, okay, that's good. I'm getting more comfortable. And then after a few nights, Alexis, our friend, she would be like, who wants to come up and pray? And then soon there would be like 15 kids wanting to pray. But most of them, they want to be so respectful. And so they'd be like, I don't know what to say or whatever. Some of them they just said whatever they wanted to. And God definitely blesses those prayers. But some of the kids were like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And they took it with so much respect, not like most kids that I've interacted with. So to be like, tell me like in my ear what to say, you know. And I'm like, well, you can't say anything wrong to God. But I would still help them, of course. But it was so neat to see that. And I'm like, do I treat even a simple prayer before I eat, do I treat it with that same respect as they did? And I definitely, we taught the kids some things, but they taught us probably a lot more things. They have a lot of potential, and I just hope, like, it's so hard. The reason it's hard to leave them is, one, they're fun to be with and you don't want to say goodbye. But two, you just don't know, like, if they'll be able to use their potential how you know that they could if they had the right resources. So we did what we could, but at that point you kind of just have to try to find people to keep connecting with them after you leave, like people that move or whatever, and keep praying for them. And they would pray things like, some of them would just pray this on their own, be like, thank you, we can worship like in your temple, and we're just out here under like a little roof outside, but they're just so reverent. Or they'd be like, one little girl praying, she's like, Jesus, we always sin, but please, she's, instead of just saying like, oh, sorry for being bad, like some kids like to pray like that, she's like, no, please help me. She's like, please help me to not want to sin anymore. And she's like this tiny girl, right? And she was saying that. So things like that touch me for sure. And that brings me to another testimony of, there was a family who lived pretty much next to the church, right? They're like neighbors to the church. And there was like parents and 3 boys and a girl. Yeah. And then their cousin lived across the street or something. So this family came every night. They could see when we started arriving because they lived next door. They'd run in to come help us, you know. And these little guys, one just texted me like 5 minutes ago. They're constantly they're so enthusiastic, so helpful. But this family, the boy in the front, well, the guy in the back is his friend Junior. He's not part of the family. But the guy in the front, Angel, he was one of the siblings. And then here's the 2 boys on the left, Noriel's in the back, and then Elston on the bottom. Those were the 3 boys. And the picture you saw of me earlier with a little girl, that was their little baby sister. And then they had the parents. So the parents started going to the adult meetings, and the 4 kids were with us. And so the parents, they had a really rough family life, right? Like the dad was always drinking, and the mom had not been happy in years from that. Technically, I think everyone there says they're Christian or Adventist, but like he said, it's more of like, if you put your name on a church record, then you're good, you know? So these kids got so on fire for God. They had Ostap, our Build and Restore leader, his girlfriend, and a couple students, some of our friends, they would go early to the meetings to go have like Bible studies with these kids because the kids wanted to study the Bible. They were begging Heather, one of our other friends, they're like, can you please just give us the Bible? Because we had one a while ago, but a rat ate it or chewed it up or something. And so, I mean, their houses aren't like rat proof or anything. So, and that's what they got. Like we did bring some Bibles. Some people bought Bibles to use personally on the trip and like write in it and then give it to someone. Or especially, I think Heather brought one that's like English and Spanish or something, because they know both. And so they got to study with them. And I think they kind of still do like over the phone, I'm pretty sure. And that was so cool because these are young kids. Like, well, the boy in the back's probably 14, I think, and then Elston's probably a little younger, yeah. And I still talk to them, and they were so cool. And I really just keep praying for these two people that they will be able to get somewhere where they can, work for God where they're at, or just for them to have different opportunities. And let's see, I had one more thing. And something we learned when we played my last little thing, I know it's getting late, but when we were at Move on the last night, we kind of just had some games and stuff with the Move staff, just some fellowship with them because we hadn't really spent time with them because we were busy. And they gave us some advice because they had been missionaries for much longer, more long-term. And they're saying how, like, everyone that lives on earth is going to suffer no matter what. That's just how it is. But if you work in missions, your suffering is, like, compensated for with the things that you gain from it. Like, you will never be richer than when you're a missionary. And it's true. Like, they had several testimonies about that. And, like, God makes you the most rich. Not to be cliche, but, like, whenever he calls you to do something, he'll give you his biddings when he calls you are also his enablings. Someone said that. And something I forgot to mention earlier when we said the trip almost didn't happen is, so Jeff, he works at Move, and as soon as our administration finally gave permission to leave the country, Mr. Peacock walked out of the meeting, and he was all happy. He just had to find a place to go, or, he's like, hey, I got to keep working, but now I can at least have permission. And then about 2 minutes after he left the meeting, then Jeff called from Move, like, we really want you guys to come help. And it's not like that was the first time we connected them, but it was so cool because Jeff had no idea what was going on our end. And so all the doors opened in a way that was like only something God could have made possible. Even with all the things happening in the world right now, to do something like that was pretty miraculous, I guess. So I think that's pretty much the things that I personally gained from the trip.
Right, and there's a couple more pictures we wanted to show you of some of the neat things we experienced, and then we will close up and have questions if you guys have any. One thing that was really fun is during the construction days, people would bring coconuts, and so in the middle of working, we would stop and they would bring us the coconut, and we could drink the water and eat the coconut meat. So that was really fun. And very delicious, very refreshing. Something that we also had fun with were the animals. So every evening we would walk back to our respective houses and we would see the frog families. And so we had a lot of fun goofing around with those guys.
They were super loud. One of them got in a giant metal bin during the kids' meeting, under our roof, like at the kids' meeting. And it was like the weirdest sound I've ever
Yeah, he was croaking under there and kind of reverberated and
it
made an eerie effect like at night with like low lights, and it was pretty fun.
Except the kids were, it was a rather big distraction, but it was pretty funny.
Right. And then we also one of my friends and I went out and did some tarantula chasing. Caught one of them. That was pretty fun. We also saw a couple iguanas. So the bottom right picture is one we were driving by on the road and saw him chilling there, so we took a picture. And also, and they're pretty mean too, so you don't want to get close to them. But they're really, really big. And then on the other spectrum, the other side, we have small geckos. I didn't have much of those in my room, but Holly had a bunch of those in her room, and I believe you were telling me something about having a hole up in your ceiling. You want to tell us about that?
Okay. So it's just like those ceiling tiles that you can just like push up. Like there's a bunch of squares on the ceiling, Not a tile, but I don't know what the material is. Anyways, so one of them someone had like took out to do something in the roof, but it was like over my bed. And I was like, we could put it back. It was like slid up in there, but I was too short and like we were just too lazy to try to do that. So we never did. But all the geckos like to run around on the roof and everywhere there. And so they would always like poop through that hole on my bed like all day and all night. So I was like, this is a great placement. But yeah. It was fine. They don't hurt anything besides that, so.
We had a lot of fun. So now we'd like to open up to any questions that you guys have about our trip, and we would be happy to answer those for you.
Don't be shy. Yes. Oh. It was no, I gave it to a little boy. So I'm not sure what picture you're referring to, but
We gave it to Emilio or...
yeah, I gave it to a little boy, so probably wasn't. Yeah. What was your question?
Could you talk about the expenses of the trip for you individually?
Oh.
Yeah. So, something just real quick. 2 years ago, we were at Fountain View Academy, and we were going to go on a mission trip to India. We did all the fundraising we needed to do, and then COVID came. Everybody closed up countries right then. They had to send us home, and we didn't get to go on our senior class trip to India or graduate in person. So that was kind of a pain. But now we just had this. I think it was $1,600 or something, $1,800 sitting at Fountain View, and so when we heard that there was going to be a mission trip with Weimar, we thought, oh, maybe we can just transfer the funds from Fountain View to Weimar, and we can go on this trip.
It wasn't my idea. I think someone else told me.
Yeah, I don't remember who came up with the idea, but so we got the money transferred, and it perfectly covered. Yeah, just a little bit money over, and it covered all the expenses we needed for this trip. So that was really cool.
Yeah, so at least the two of us didn't have to raise money during finals week. So that was a blessing. Yeah. I was going to mention that. Thanks for reminding me. Any other question? Could be anything. Oh, the showers were really nice. That's like, you can take like 5 showers a day because then you actually aren't like sweating. The only time you're not sweating, I think. Oh.
And your skin doesn't dry out bad because it's so humid there.
Oh yeah, you never have dry skin either. Actually, no. The only time we weren't sweating is like in the van because we had AC. But
right.
No. We had fans, like they have the fans along the wall, in the churches and stuff. And usually it's adequate because you're also in the shade, so it's not like.
And you're not exerting yourself, so it was tolerable.
Yes, Mom.
Do you still get phone calls from the kids that you work with?
Yeah, like every day. Usually I'm at work and I'm like, sorry.
I think probably they have one family cell phone, and that kind of makes its way into different hands around the family. So sometimes I'll get a call from one kid, and a little bit later I'll get a call from another kid in the same family. So I think that's probably how it works. Some families don't have phones, but for the ones that do.
And they call over Wi-Fi, I think. Otherwise it'd be expensive, right?
Right, yeah, and yeah, I don't know.
They
get
call
Wi-Fi
over
somehow.
like Instagram or something. Yeah,
Right.
so it's free. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
We noticed when we were in Africa that even people that are, what are they called, Maasai, that they would have phones, they're wearing a drape around them, and they usually are carrying a spear, and every once in a while you'll see them pull their phone out and start texting. So, phones are everywhere.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know, it's like I was saying, they're all really poor there, but they basically all have phones. So I don't know how that works. Unless it's
Interesting
just,
priorities.
I guess so. And it's not like the parents, I mean, they have less resources. They can get a phone, but they have less resources that kids would appreciate available there, even if you have the money. That's really the problem, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
They were kind of formed in just blocks, and some are shacks, some of them are brick homes or like cinder blocks, built up somewhat precariously. Mostly just enough to, have 4 walls, a roof, and, you'll see holes between the wall and the ceiling and all bunch of crazy stuff. So, most of the villages we went to are pretty poor.
Like Maricel's house was made of just
sticks and old boards and stuff.
But she had like a whole stove for her giant pots and stuff. So
right.
It's just the outside is,
So they live in some
they have a
interesting
TV,
places.
but they just have really no walls, pretty much. So I really don't know how that works. Yes.
I was just curious, who did you have for supervising like the building of the block wall?
We had our build and restore leader, Ostop. He was part of that, and then also some of the people from the MOVE organization there were very skilled with construction, and they supervised us, taught us how to lay the mortar and and worked alongside us. Some of the other students had experience with it before on previous mission trips, and so everybody just kind of shared their knowledge. And every once in a while, one of the higher up people would come and make sure everything's going clear, and so it went pretty smoothly, surprisingly.
Mostly.
Yes.
Was the foundation of that church and the sides of the roof, was that a one-day church program?
Maybe.
Just did the walls?
It might have been.
I don't know,
I'm not
'cause
sure
it was-
what it was, but it looked like it. Yeah.
Because it was already there, or it had like a little sign on it, and so I was like, oh, okay, someone was here before.
Yeah.
But they didn't have time or resources, I guess, to finish it, so. That's a good question. Like for the kids or just for ourselves? All together? Alexis went to dollar store and got a ton of stuff for the kids' meetings. Paper, all that kind of stuff.
She kind of thought up the stories and crafts she would want to do before it, and also printed out a lot of
Templates.
templates with papers for like folding.
She's a
crafts and
teacher
stuff.
for sure. But then for ourselves,
For ourselves.
and we brought some nice things like that, gifts for the people that work at Move, especially like maybe some fancy stuff for like the girls that they don't usually get, or stuff like that, or nice books or something. So we gave them gifts just for letting us stay there and all that, cooking for us every day. For ourselves, just personal stuff. Ostop, the guy from Build and Restore, he's done so many trips. He had a list already of like just basic stuff you need on pretty much any international trip, and you really don't need much. We all just brought like either like a small suitcase or like a backpack. So, Oh, you brought that.
Yeah, this is what I took on the trip for 2 weeks. Put everything in here. So you could make do with just a little bit.
We had
do
a washing
laundry.
machine in
Yeah.
the houses on the Move campus. We had a washing machine, each of us.
Yeah.
You just have to fill it up with the hose. Oh, it's fine.
We also took a lot of hand sanitizer for the people there.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really have much, and they really needed that.
And we handed out a lot of toothbrushes and toothpaste, and with the glasses and stuff. Like we had that whole station too.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought a lot of things. Like we all brought I think the guys had 2 giant checked suitcases, and then the rest of us had one. The girls had one, just for supplies. So our personal stuff was not really, just a little bit. It got a bit complicated in the airport sometimes, but we made it. So.
And all the stuff that we didn't need, like extra toothbrush, toothpaste, all that stuff we left there, which was nice. And we came back with so much less than we took there.
We had a suitcase full of suitcases to bring